Good morning, dolls, and welcome to Little Gretchen's workshop. So today I'm literally going to allow you dolls to watch me play. So I'm at my craft table and I have so many new supplies and I just want to try things out to see what I can come up with. Now, this was a small piece of a plastic cylinder that I cut a segment out of it. Now, this piece I've already previously cured resin at the bottom of it to make it look like a cylinder like vase or canister. You can see here in these frames I'm removing the Scotch tape that I put at the bottom to keep the resin from oozing out. So here I'm just bringing them up close so you can see them really good, and they really do look realistic. Now here's a larger one that I cured earlier, and I think I'm going to use it as a cookie jar. Now I'd saved this big rivet or button from an old pair of jeans, and I thought it would look good as the lid for the canister, and I was really tickled when I realized that the fit was perfect. So let me set this aside. Now I was considering using these gingerbread men, but I want to toast them up a little. Now dolls, I have this eyeshadow palette with a lot of neutral colors. So in addition to toasting up the gingerbread, I wanted to toast up some slices of bread as well. And after doing a light dusting with a couple different shades, although it added a little color, it didn't give me the depth that I wanted. So I added some alcohol to some acrylic paint and I freely drizzled the mixture over each slice of bread, and it really began to take on a very authentic tone. It almost looked buttery. These tiny slices of bread remind me of when my children were little, and I took them to Vacation Bible School for the first time, and the kitchen staff served sandwiches made with Wonder Bread, and my children began to cry because they had never seen Wonder Bread. So although I grew up eating Wonder Bread, I had never given it to my children, so I had to leave the event early, take them home and feed them because they were afraid to eat the bread. And after I was done adding the wash to the bread, I started to add it to the little gingerbread men because gingerbread, when I was a little kid, it was a lot darker than that. So I'm trying to add a couple layers to it to make it look more gingery. Now, while the gingerbread and the pieces of toast were still slightly damp, I shaved off some brown chalk pastel to give it another layer of color. And dolls, if you've been following me a while, you know I believe in doing layers when it comes to color. After doing a few of the gingerbread men, I really thought that it looked good, so I did several more and added them to the cylinder-like container. Now, instead of using craft glue, I did use the glue and glaze because I didn't want to cloud the acetate plastic. And after adding the glue and glaze, I put my little button on top and allowed it to dry. Now, after I added the button, it did ooze a little bit, so I had to clean up the edges. So be really, really careful. You do not want to use acetone or anything like that because it will definitely cloud your plastic. And although the size of the button was a perfect fit, I had to make sure it was lined up properly so that it would dry straight. But overall, I was really tickled with my result. So dolls, I was gifted some lovely produce, and these were like little cabbages or lettuce. So I really liked them, and I wanted to tone the color down to make it look a little bit more realistic, to give a little variety to the shades. So again, I mixed some alcohol and acrylic paint in this deep green, and I just kind of patted the color into the leaves to see how much of it would take in hopes that it'll kind of tone down the shine and add some deeper dimensions of the green. While the first one was drying, I went on to do the other ones the exact same way. With the second one, I did it a little bit heavier to see the difference of what it would look like after it dried. And once I started applying it heavier to this one, I realized I really liked that look better. And it seemed like the heavier the application, the more I liked the way the cabbage looked. And by the time I finished the second one, I was really brave when I got to the third one. So I started applying a heavy coat right out of the gate, which made me go back and add a heavier coat to both of the previous ones to make them look more similar. But this was a really fun project. It was simple, it was easy. So many times you can enhance already made miniatures just with a little extra paint and color. Now this little lettuce was already perfect and just beautifully made, but I just added a little tap of the color that was left on my brush just to make it a little bit deeper, but this was absolutely lovely. I loved it, so it's going to be lovely in my arrangement as well. So dolls, I want you to know that I'm making all this food because my heart is really in Miss Betty's kitchen, and it's getting close to harvest season, and the dolls have canning and things to do to prepare for the winter, and in the midst of all those thoughts of food, I saw this piece of mesh, and I thought it looked like honeycomb. So I wanted to try it out in the jar with some resin to see if I could create that illusion. So I cut up some small pieces of the mesh and used the pointed part of my scissors to push it down into the jar. And here from this angle, you can see how cute it is. So everything was going well, and then I made a really poor choice. In haste to just see how it was going to look, I poured the alcohol ink right into the jar, cured it, and it didn't kind of turn out very well. It was very cloudy. It was too much ink, so I needed to do it again. And this time I put the resin directly into the jar and then added the alcohol ink second, and then tried to blend it and stir it together with a toothpick. And again, with my second attempt, another poor choice. The honey was very cloudy and it looked thick, and you couldn't even see the honeycomb. So, in efforts to salvage my botched project and not waste my resin, I had another idea. So, I grabbed another clean glass jar and I tried to carefully pour the botched honey into the clean jar. Now, dolls, always be careful with something like this, and always, always, always wear nitrile gloves when using resin. So in my third attempt to make the honey, I put a little dot of the alcohol ink into my silicone container, and I added a small amount of resin to the ink so that I could blend them together. And I also added a little plain resin to 2 of the jars. Then I used a toothpick to blend the resin and the alcohol ink until the mixture was blended well and the color looked uniform. Then I added it a little at a time into the jars that I had put the plain resin in. And after I had added an ample amount, I used the same toothpick to blend the plain resin and the mixed resin together. At this point, I was at least feeling good about the transparency of the honey, and I wanted to go ahead and add my faux honeycomb. So I used my toothpick again to tuck the honeycomb pieces down into the resin, and I think that looks pretty good. It looks a lot better than that first batch. And although I'm really happy about this batch and the transparency of the honey, I'm really not satisfied with the color. It looks too yellow. I feel like it should look warmer. So I added a little tinge of orange. And after I blended the orange with the yellow that was still in the little silicone cup, I added a couple dots of the new blend into my existing jars of honey. And I just blended a little drop, and I think that little bit of orange made it look a lot warmer. So now those two are ready to be cured, but I still had resin in my little silicone cup and I didn't want to waste it. So I added a couple drops of red to the honey mixture, which created a beautiful red color that looked just like syrup. And I had a couple jars that were filled with what looked like berries, grapes, or plums, so I added the red mixture to those jars. When I used up the majority of the red syrup mixture, I pushed everything together to cure everything, including the cup that I had mixed all the colors in. You want anything that you used resin on or mixed resin in to all be cured under the lamp. Now that I'm done with all that, my mind went back to the cylinder canisters that I made at the beginning of the video. Now, one of them I filled with desiccant that I had stained with the alcohol ink, and that looks like that could be grape jam or cranberries, whichever your imagination says. And those grapes or berries were so cute, I think I might leave them without a lid. Now, I really wanted to fill that clear cylinder with something else from Miss Betty's pantry or kitchen, so I sanded down the pointed part of the fastener so that it would look like a lid. And then I filled the cylinder with some salt that was left over from a previous project. And dolls, in a dollhouse, salt mimics sugar. Now, there is one more thing I wanted to share with you, dolls, before I let you go. I had these lovely little, I'm not sure what they are, but they look like little onions that were gifted to me by my precious doll, Sherry Lynn. So this portion of the video is inspired by what I saw in a video done by Nessie from Nessie Monster Craft, and by these little onions gifted to me by Sherry Lynn. I will leave a link in the description so you can see the video done by Nessie from Nessie Monster Crafts. And before this video is over, I'm going to show you the onions made for me by Sherry Lynn. So for these little faux onions, I gouged out the tip of them and glued some leftover green beans to the tips of them to make it look like the stems of some green onions. Now I have a little torn piece of tissue paper that I previously stained with some water and acrylic paint. And I'm wrapping the little tissue paper around the bulb and the end of the stems to fuse them together, and the tissue paper is being used to mimic the skins of onions. And while the glue was still damp, I twisted it so that it would bond to the base of the little stem part to really look like a green onion. Now, if you need to add a little additional glue to make everything fuse together, just make sure it's a glue that dries absolutely clear. And by now, you dolls know that I did several to give myself some practice. And when I was done, this is what I had. And I was really excited about doing this project and really tickled about how they all turned out because it's been on my desk for the longest time and I've been wanting to sit out and do this, but I've had so many other things going on. So to be at this stage of completing something that's been on my desk and I've been thinking about a long time is really satisfying. So now that I've got the bulb with the stem and the skins on it and everything, I've got to share with you this last really cute part. So in Nessie's video, she cut up some teeny strings of like burlap strings to be those tiny stems that are at the bottom of the bulb, and I thought that was absolutely genius. So after I cut up an ample amount of the little strings, I took my little bulb, tapped it in some of my tacky glue, and then I gently tapped it into the little strings cut up on my table. And you only need a few to give it that impression. Really quick, dolls, let me show you the ones that Sherry Lynn made for me. Aren't those adorable? The color is absolutely perfect. The shape is the best. And so I just added the little stems to give it another layer of fun. So now when the ladies are cooking for the winter, they have two different types of onions to give them some additional layers of flavor. Now, if this is your first time watching and you want to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe. And always look for me on Mondays after 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I sure would like to know in the comments what you like most about this video. So dolls, I have a few more food items that I need to make because winter is coming. There are new dolls on their way, so there are a lot of tiny mouths to feed. So let me get back to my table. And until next time, I'm looking forward to seeing you all right here on Little Gretchen's Workshop. Bye bye now, dolls.